No one is born wanting to live alone in the forest. At least, that's what I used to think. For years, I lived in cramped concrete rooms. Every morning began with the blare of traffic horns and ended under the pale yellow glow of streetlights. Life drifted by steadily, like a machine that never stops. I had a job, a schedule, and conversations that repeated themselves day after day. But the longer I lived that way, the more empty I felt. There were evenings when I sat alone, staring at a blank phone screen. No new messages, nothing that truly made me look forward to tomorrow. I began to ask myself, am I living or just existing? The thought of the forest came to me by chance. Once, I watched an old video of the deep woods. There was no background music, only the sound of the wind, the rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of birds. I watched it over and over again, as if something were calling out to me. I didn't think of it as escaping. I thought of it as returning. The decision to go into the forest didn't happen in a single day. I spent weeks reflecting. I read about survival, building simple shelters, starting a fire without a lighter, and finding clean water in the wild. I didn't intend to prove anything to anyone. I just wanted to know if I could survive on my own, with my own two hands. The day I left, the city was as crowded as ever. No one knew where I was going. No one asked. I carried an old backpack. Inside were a small knife, an axe, some rope, a metal pot, and a few basic essentials. I didn't bring a watch. I didn't need to know the time anymore. The motorbike stopped at the edge of the forest. Ahead of me, the trees grew thick. Sunlight was blocked by the canopy, leaving only thin slivers of light dancing on the damp ground. The air was cooler, the scent of earth, decaying leaves, the true scent of nature. I stood there for a long time, not because of fear, but because of respect. The forest is not a place to be conquered. The forest is a place to learn humility. My first steps were very slow. I listened to every sound. Every unfamiliar noise made me pause. A twig snapping underfoot, a bird taking flight, a gust of wind shaking the treetops. Everything reminded me that I was merely a guest. I didn't go too deep on the first day. I chose a patch of high ground, not too close to the stream and not too overgrown. As evening approached, the light began to fade. On my first night in the forest, I had no home. I built a small fire. The flame was weak, but enough to ward off the creeping cold. I sat there, gazing into the fire, listening to the forest at night. No more cars, no more people, only nature and myself. For the first time in a very long time, I felt my mind go quiet. When night fell completely, the sky revealed itself through the trees. The stars appeared clearer than anywhere I had ever seen. I lay on the ground, my back pressed against the cool earth. I thought about a house. Not a big house. It didn't need amenities, just a place to shield me from the rain and wind, a place I could call mine, built from earth, wood, and sweat. I don't know how long I will stay here, a month, a year, or longer, but I know one thing. Starting tomorrow, I will begin to rebuild my life from zero, deep in the forest, in the heart of nature, and with these very hands.
The first morning in the forest arrived gently. No alarm clocks, no sounds of traffic. I woke up as thin slivers of sunlight pierced through the canopy, brushing against my face. The air was crisp and cool. Dew still clung to the grass and the broad leaves. I sat up slowly. My body was sore after a night on the hard ground. My back ached slightly. My throat was dry. But my mind was remarkably clear. I took a deep breath. The air was fresh, smelling of damp earth and tree resin. The first thing I thought of was water. A person can go hungry for a few days, but water is essential. I cleared the remains of last night's fire, covering the ashes with soil to prevent any spread. Then I began my search for a nearby water source. I moved toward lower ground. The terrain sloped slightly, the soil soft beneath my feet. My ears were strained, listening, and then, after about 15 minutes, I heard the faint sound of trickling water. A stream. The water was crystal clear, flowing slowly as it meandered through moss-covered rocks. I knelt down and cupped my hands. The water was biting cold, but refreshing. I didn't drink immediately. I knew that in the forest, one should never take clean water for granted. I took my metal pot, scooped up some water, and headed back to my chosen clearing. I rekindled the fire and set the pot over it. As the water boiled, I sat and waited, quietly watching the smoke rise and blend into the air. At that moment, I realized one thing. Everything in the forest takes time. Food was the next challenge. I didn't have much, just a few small packs I had brought from the city. I knew I had to learn to rely on the forest, but there was no need to rush. For the first few days, I observed more than I acted. I walked around the area, marking paths, identifying large trees, and noting clearings. I found a few types of wild berries I had read about, but I didn't dare eat them. Without certain knowledge, I wouldn't take the risk. At noon, the sun climbed higher, yet it remained cool under the forest canopy. I ate very little, just enough to keep my strength. Every bite was chewed slowly. In the forest, there is no room for excess. As evening approached, the sky began to change color. The wind grew stronger. Gray clouds rolled in quickly. I looked up and understood that forest rain gives no warning.
I had no house, no proper shelter. I gathered dry branches and leaned them against a large tree trunk to create a makeshift lean-to. I covered it with large leaves. When the first drops of rain fell, I had already crawled inside. Forest rain is different. It isn't gentle, it doesn't build up slowly. It arrives suddenly and violently, as if the sky were pouring itself onto the earth. The sound of rain drumming against leaves, soil, and wood echoed intensely. Water began to seep through the layers of leaves. I curled my body tight. Cold, wet, but I didn't panic. I sat still and listened. I let the forest do what it always does, and I was just a very small part of it. The second night arrived with the scent of damp earth. Starting a fire was harder this time. The wood was wet, the wind blew. But finally, a weak flame flickered to life. I sat close to the fire, drying my clothes. In the dark, sounds became more distinct. The hum of insects, the rustle of leaves. Occasionally, I heard a louder noise in the distance. Perhaps an animal, perhaps just a falling branch. I didn't know. I learned not to speculate too much. Fear in the forest does not come from actual danger. It comes from the imagination. I kept the fire going all night, not just for warmth, but to reassure myself. The flame was small, but it was enough to make me feel less alone. On the morning of the third day, I woke up with a very clear thought. I couldn't keep living like this. A makeshift lean-to wasn't enough. A place to stay for the night wasn't a home. If I wanted to stay for the long term, I needed something solid. I stood in the middle of the clearing, looking around. The ground, the trees, the light, the wind. I began to observe with different eyes. No longer a person lost in the woods, but a person preparing to build. I checked the elevation of the land. I watched the direction of the wind. I noted the sun's path throughout the day. I looked for signs of underground water. Everything mattered. My future home would start here, not today, but very soon.
I placed my hand on the ground, feeling its coolness and moisture. I spoke softly, as if to myself. Here, this could work. And for the first time since entering the forest, I smiled.